All right, in this lesson we're going to look at how supply and demand interact to form market equilibrium. And so we're just going to be doing the same thing with the supply curve and the demand curve, but we're just going to put them together. And then the next thing we're going to look at how a change in either the supply or the demand curve will will result in either excess supply or excess demand, and how market forces will act and create a new equilibrium. Okay, so let's start off with an example. Let's say, so what we want to do is create a demand and supply schedule. Demand and supply schedule. And so think back to yourself before I draw this out, what that looks like and what that does. Okay, so hopefully you remembered that we'll put a quantity demanded there. We're going to put all these on in one place. All right, so we're going to have, so this side, let me highlight this real quick. So this is our demand schedule, and this is the supply schedule. All right, and so we just put them together with price being common between them. So let's get back to the pen. And so let's just make up some prices. Let's go from 0 to 5. And then let's say that at a price of 0, people want 100 of these. And at a price of $1, they want 80. At a price of $2, they want 60. At $3, they want 40. At $4, they want 20. And at $5, let's say they want 10. All right. The quantity supplied at a price of 0, nobody's going to supply anything. At a price of $1, let's say they'll supply 15. At a price of $2, they will supply 30. At a price of $3, they'll supply 40. And then a price of $4, 50. And $5, 60. All right, remember this is dollars. Let's put that in real quick. All right, so those are dollars. And so now what we want to do is come over here and we want to plot it out. Now we don't need to put quantity demanded or quantity supplied. This is just the quantity, the equilibrium quantity, or the quantity that's going to be purchased. And up here, remember, is price. And so we've got from 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So $5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then we have up to 100, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So that's 100, 80, 60, 40, and 20. Okay, so now we just want to plot these out. And so let's do the demand curve first. And so at a price of 0, people demand 100. So let's change colors here. At a price of 0, people demand 100. At a price of $1, they demand 80. At $2, they demand 60. At $3, they demand 40. At $4, they demand 20. And at $5, they demand 10. Remember, we just draw those together as best we can. Label that demand. And then we can do supply. At $0, they'll provide 0. At $1, they'll do 15. Just 10, 15 there. At $2, they'll do 30. At $3, they'll do 40. At $4, they'll do 50. Somewhere thereabouts. And at $5, they'll do 60. All right, so we want to draw these. Again, not perfect, but get the idea. And so there's the supply. All right, and so what can we do with this graph? As you'll notice, I want you to remember that anywhere along this demand curve, are consumers happy? You know, if the price is $2, are people happy at $2? And you'd say, yeah. You know, people wanting to buy 60 are happy. If the price were $1, you'd make 20 more people happy. If the price were $3, 20 less people. But you know, everybody's okay on this line because they'll either decide I either want to buy it or I don't, based on whatever the price is. Same with supply. Suppliers are happy anywhere along this line. So at a price of $1, some supplier is happy producing 15. All these other people aren't, but this one person is. Okay, whoever's going to do the 15 at $3, suppliers are happy doing 40. Okay, uh, there's some suppliers that wouldn't produce at $3 if the price were $3. They would say, you know what, you just need to give me $4 or $5, and then I'll join in the production. But until then, I'm okay not producing. I'll produce something else. No big deal. And so, what we want to do is find where the consumers and the suppliers are both happy. Okay, and so there's one spot where they're both happy. All right, if the price were zero, the consumers would demand 100, but at a price of zero, the producers don't want to produce any. They're not going to make any money. At a price of $1, consumers want 80 of them, but $1 is not a very high price, and so the suppliers, just only a couple suppliers are getting into the market, and so they're only going to produce 15. At $2, consumers want to buy 60 of them. The price is still kind of low, but the increase from $1 to 2 has caused the quantity supplied to go up to 30. But you can see that we want 60, and the suppliers are only willing to give us 30, and so we're still not happy together. But notice what happens at $3. 40 consumers want 40 of them, and we're happy with it. The consumers are, and the suppliers are like, you know what, we can do 40 at $3. And so this is where the two intersect. All right, and so whenever you get this point where the quantity, let me just draw this. Let's say that market equilibrium is when the quantity demanded is equal to the quantity supplied. All right, and so if you ever get a supply and demand schedule, and the question simply says, where's the equilibrium price? All right, so we know the equilibrium price is when the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied are equal. And whatever that point is, that is the equilibrium price. All right, and so let me just take a second because we're going to use this graph. Let me see if I can copy and paste this to the other slide because we want to use this graph. Copy over here, paste. All right, that's not bad. Oops, don't want to do that. Let's see if we can move it just a little bit. Nope, don't want to do that. Making a bit of a mess here, I apologize. Let's just drag it down a little bit. Let's come back up to this one, move it down. Okay, so let's go back over. This is the first slide that we were on. And so this is called the equilibrium. This is market equilibrium. Market equilibrium. And so from there, wherever these two lines intersect, we can come across to the y-axis where the price is, and that'll show us the equilibrium price. And we can come straight down, and that'll show us the equilibrium quantity. All right, and so this is also known as the market clearing price, just meaning that nothing would be left on the shelves. The producers would put 40 units on a shelf, and at a price of $3, and 40 people would show up, and there wouldn't be any extra. Okay, everybody would be happy. So this is how we get the interaction. This is how we set the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity. All right. So let's go over here, and this will be the last part of this video. We want to look at what happens with excess demand and excess supply. So let's say at a price of $1. All right. At a price of $1, what's going on? Who's happy and who's sad? So let's say at a price of $1, we're going to come over here until we hit the supply curve. We know, well, that's hard to see. So we know at a price of $1, the quantity supplied is going to be 15. So the quantity supplied equals 15. Then we can come over here and keep coming until we hit demand, and we know that at a price of $1, the demand is 80. And so if the quantity supplied is 15 and the quantity demanded is 80, that means that 80 people are showing up, but there's only 15 on the shelves. And so we would say that there is a shortage of a product if we're here. Okay, this is just how to read these curves. There would be a shortage of 65 because 80 people are going, 15 are on the shelf, and so 65 people are going to leave, and they're going to leave sad. All right, how about at $4? Let's how you read this graph. So start your jotted line over. The first curve you come in contact with is the demand curve, and so this point is going to tell you the quantity demanded. And so at $4, you come straight down here and say, at $4, the quantity demanded is 20. All right, so we know that quantity demanded equals 20. And then we can keep coming across at $4 until we hit the next curve, and that's the supply curve. And so wherever this price intersects either of these curves, so wherever it intersects the supply curve, it will tell us the quantity supplied. So at a price of $4, we come down here, and we know that at a price of $4, the quantity supplied equals 50. And so in this case, we have a quantity supplied of 50, quantity demanded of 20. And so you'd say that we have a surplus. We got too much. 20 people show up to the store. The producers put 50 of them out on the shelf. When the consumers leave, there's still 30 of them still sitting there. All right, and so that's how we read these curves. So let's take a look at what's going to happen when we start to move these curves. So let me just take a second, and if you want to draw these as well. And what we're going to do is start shifting the curves. We've gotten the equilibrium price. We know how to read that. We've gotten the equilibrium quantity. And we know how to read that. And we know how to set up the two curves on the basis of a supply and demand schedule. And so now what we want to do is show what happens when these curves start to shift. All right, what happens to the price and the quantity when we shift all these curves. And so I would recommend you take notes and draw these out because we're going to be drawing a lot of these, and the practice is good for you. Okay, so we're going to take 4 different scenarios. So let's say, let me get a different color here. So let's say that we have an increase in demand. And just so real quick, let's try and refresh. What are some things that would cause an increase in demand? And so we need to look at the demand determinants. That's things like change in income, taste and preferences, population, expectation of future prices, complementary or substitute goods, or competitive goods that are in competitive or joint demand. So a lot of different things. So let's just pretend all of these are the market for apples. And so what would cause an increase? Oh, hang on just a second. Sorry about that. Hope that wasn't loud. What would cause an increase in the demand for apples? We could just say that the government came out and said that apples prevent cancer. Apple a day keeps the doctor away becomes the nation's biggest phrase. And so let's say we increase the demand. So let me go back real quick and say, just to remind us, this is, let me draw that over. Oh, little dot, dot, dot. Bad dots on that one. So this is, wherever these two intersect, remember, is our initial price. And then you come back up to that dot and draw the dotted line down, and that gives us the quantity. Okay, and these are the initial price and quantity. So getting back to this, people start to buy a lot more apples. And so what's going to happen? We're going to move up along. There'll be a shift in the demand curve to the right. So now we have a new price, and we can come down. We have a new quantity as well. And so an increase in demand will cause an increase in the price and an increase in the quantity. All right. Now, if you take a look at this, is this a change in demand or a change in the quantity demanded? Now, if you remember back to the other videos, a change in the quantity demanded is simply when we moved along the demand curve. Change in demand is when the whole curve shifts. So this is a change in demand. Now, how about supply? Is this a change in supply or quantity supplied? What I want you to take a look at is here we were on the supply curve, and something happened, and the equilibrium point moved from one spot on the supply curve to another spot on the same supply curve. So this is a change in the quantity supplied. All right. So an increase in demand will cause an increase in the price of a product and an increase in the quantity, and it will cause a change in demand itself because we have a shift of this curve and a change in the quantity supplied because the equilibrium point is moving from one spot on the supply curve to the other. All right, so let's go down here, and let's say that there's a decrease in the demand for apples. Let's say that it's caused by a change. Let's say oranges have a great season and oranges become a lot cheaper. Oranges, we know, are a competitive demand to apples. And so if the price of oranges goes down, then we would expect the demand for apples to go down. And so here's our first one. Let's draw in the original price. So P1 and Q1. All right. So if there's a decrease in demand for apples, let's shift the curve to the left. It's leftward shift. So what do you notice happens to the price and to the quantity? Okay, so as you can see, the price went down, because remember, here's 0. So the price went down and the quantity went down as well. So a decrease in demand is going to cause a decrease in the price and a decrease in the quantity. Now, again, is this a change in demand or a change in the quantity demanded? And so if one of the determinants of demand changes, that will cause the demand curve itself to shift. And so when the curve picks up and moves to a new spot, it is a change in that curve. So here we have a change in demand, and if you look at the supply, we went from one point on this supply curve to another point on this supply curve, but the supply curve itself didn't move. It stayed the same. We're just moving from point to point. So we'd say that this is a change in the quantity supplied of that curve. All right. Now let's work with the supply curve. Alrighty. So if we have an increase in supply, all right, let's say that there's more producers, more farmers growing apples. And so let's start off again. Here's our initial price, P1, and here's our initial quantity of Q1. If we have an increase in supply, increase in the number of producers, that'll shift the supply curve to the right. All right, and notice we have a new intersection between supply and demand. Oops, that says quantity. That should say demand. Sorry about that. Let's see if we can fix that real quick. All right, so we have an increase in supply, and wherever the new equilibrium point is, just put your pen down. Sorry about that. Put your pen down, go to the left. That gives you the new price. That's P2. That's P1. And then go back, put your pencil there, or pen. Drop it straight down. That gives you the new quantity. Remember, this is 0, so if we're moving this way, that's an increase. So we can say that the quantity went up, and this is an increase. So the price went up we went down. So we went from P1 down to P2. And so with an increase in supply, we will have a decrease in the price, and an increase in the quantity. Now, is this a change in demand or a change in the quantity demanded? As you can see, we have this spot on the demand curve, and then we move to this spot on the demand curve. And so we're staying on the curve. And so we would say that's a change in the quantity demanded. And then if we have the curve that picks up and moves because of a change in determinants, that is a change in supply itself. All right, and then the last one. If you want to pause it, see if you can figure out. We're going to decrease supply, figure out what happens to the price and the quantity, and whether it's a change in supply or quantity supplied. So pause it now if you want, but otherwise, here we go. Start where the market equilibrium is. Remember, that's also called the market clearing price. Come over here. That's your initial price, and here's your initial quantity. And so we're going to have a decrease in supply. Let's say that some bugs go and destroy half of the crop, half of the apple crop. And so a decrease in supply is a shift to the left. So it's S2, make that an S1. And so we have a new equilibrium point, so put your pencil there and do your dotted lines to the left. That gives you the new price. Put your pencil back on the equilibrium point, drop it down. That gives you the new quantity, and so you can see that we're moving this way. On the bottom along the quantity, there's 0, so we're moving towards 0, so that's getting smaller. Quantity's getting smaller. And we're moving from this spot, this price here, up to this price here, and so we can say a decrease in supply is going to cause an increase in the price and a decrease in the quantity. All right, And how about demand versus quantity demanded? All right, again, this demand curve has stayed the same. All we did was move from this point on it to this point on it. So this is a change in the quantity demanded, and the whole supply curve shifted. So it'd be a change in supply. Now, for our purposes, these are the four that you're going to see uh, for what we're talking about. Okay, in reality, the supply and demand curve move at the same time. For simplicity's sake, we're just going to keep them like this. So an increase in demand, this is what happens. And I would strongly recommend that you get good at doing the graphs, because to try to remember all of this, what happens with an increase in supply, don't try and memorize it. Once you can learn how to draw the graphs, the picture will tell you exactly what's going on. Okay, so make sure you can draw these out, and we'll be working on, I'll give you some scenarios where there's a change in a determinant. You have to figure out which determinant, what happens to the price and the quantity. So we will stop it there, and we'll pick up on the next one with what happens, what causes this change in the price.